Have you ever wondered why some family fortunes seem to last forever, weathering recessions, wars, and time itself? Meanwhile, others, often huge brand new fortunes, can vanish in a single generation. The headlines are full of these stories. Lottery winners who go bankrupt. Heirs of massive companies who lose it all. There's a reason for the saying, shirt sleeves to shirt sleeves in 3 generations. The first generation earns it, the second enjoys it, and the third is left with nothing but old photos. But what about the families that break the cycle? The Rockefellers, the Rothschilds, the Astors, names that are synonymous with lasting wealth. How do they pull it off? It's not about how much money they make. It's about how much they keep. For centuries, the ultra-wealthy have used a playbook of sophisticated strategies to protect their wealth from 3 things: crippling taxes, devastating lawsuits, and maybe the most dangerous threat of all, reckless heirs. And the heart of that playbook, the one tool that makes it all possible, is the trust fund. So today, we're looking inside that world. We're revealing 10 specific strategies that old money families use to lock up their fortunes for centuries. This isn't just legal theory. This is about the exact structures and, just as important, the mindsets that shield their capital and ensure their legacy lives on. The first and most important strategy in the old money playbook is creating something called a dynasty trust. Now, this isn't your average trust fund that just hands over cash when a kid turns 21. A dynasty trust is a completely different animal, built like a financial fortress designed to last for generations, sometimes even forever. Think of a normal inheritance like a briefcase full of cash. The minute it's handed over, it's vulnerable. It can be spent, taxed, lost in a bad investment, or taken in a divorce. A dynasty trust, on the other hand, works more like a permanent family endowment. The assets, stocks, real estate, businesses are put inside the trust, and they legally belong to the trust itself, not to any one person. The person who created the fortune sets the rules. The beneficiaries, kids, grandkids, great-grandkids, don't get the whole fortune. Instead, they get distributions from the trust based on those rules. These can be for specific things like education, healthcare, or starting a business, or it might just be a steady income. But here's the brilliant part. Because the beneficiaries never legally own the assets in the trust, that money isn't part of their personal estate when they die. This means the fortune avoids the massive hit of estate taxes with every single transfer. A 40% federal estate tax can wipe out a fortune in just a couple of generations. The Dynasty Trust neatly sidesteps this, letting the original capital grow and compound, decade after decade. The Rockefeller family is a perfect example, having used trusts established in the early 20th century to preserve and grow their wealth for well over a century. To make sure this all works, these trusts are almost never managed by a family member. Old money families know that emotions and money are a terrible mix. They appoint professional, independent trustees, like a large bank or a specialized trust company. These trustees have a legal duty to follow the trust's instructions perfectly, managing the money with discipline and handing out funds without getting caught up in family drama. It's a system designed for permanence, turning a simple fortune into a lasting dynasty. Once a fortune is built, the main goal of old money shifts from making more to protecting what's there. They know the world is full of financial risks. A business deal can go bad, a professional can get sued, a marriage can end. Any one of these can slice a fortune in half. This is where the second strategy comes in, using specific, irrevocable trusts as a shield. The key word here is irrevocable. Once assets go into this kind of trust, the original owner gives up control. That doesn't sound like a good thing, but it's actually the source of its power. Imagine an heir is a successful surgeon, and she gets hit with a multi-million-dollar malpractice lawsuit. If her inheritance was just given to her outright, if it's sitting in her bank account, those assets are on the table. A creditor can take them. Now, let's replay that with an asset protection trust. The family fortune isn't in her name. It's owned by the trust her great-grandfather set up. Because she doesn't legally own the money, her creditors can't touch it. It's locked away, safe from the risks of her job. The trust acts as a legal firewall between the family's legacy and the personal liabilities of the beneficiaries. This protection also covers one of the biggest threats to family wealth: divorce. In many places, assets inherited directly by a spouse can become marital property, meaning they can be split in a divorce. But assets held in a multi-generational, irrevocable trust are usually considered separate property. The trust existed before the marriage. So if an heir's marriage ends, their ex-spouse typically has no claim on the money inside the trust. In a way, the Dynasty Trust acts as a permanent prenup for every member of the family. By using these kinds of structures, old money families don't just hope to avoid threats. They build a legal fortress that makes the core of their wealth untouchable, ensuring that the mistakes or misfortunes of one generation can't bankrupt the next. A deep fear for anyone who builds a fortune is that an heir will waste it all. We've all heard stories about trust fund babies who blow through millions on toys and parties, leaving nothing for their own kids. Old money knows this risk all too well, and they use trust not just to protect assets from outsiders, but to protect the beneficiaries from themselves. They do this with two powerful tools: the spendthrift clause and the incentive trust. First, the spendthrift trust. It does exactly what it sounds like. It's designed to stop a financially irresponsible heir from spending everything. It puts strict limits on their access to the money. For example, instead of letting them withdraw a huge sum, the trustee is instructed to only pay out a set amount on a regular schedule, like a monthly allowance. This covers their living expenses, but stops them from buying a fleet of Lamborghinis on a Tuesday. The beneficiary can't borrow against the trust or sell their future rights to it, which cuts them off from their own worst impulses. This also protects the trust itself. If the heir racks up a huge credit card bill, the credit card company can't come after the trust to pay it, because the heir doesn't directly control the funds. But old money goes a step further. They don't just want to stop bad behavior, they want to encourage good behavior. That's the point of an incentive trust. These are some of the most personal and interesting trust structures. The person who created the trust can tie payments directly to specific life goals, essentially hardwiring the family's values into the estate plan. An incentive trust might state that a grandchild gets a large payment when they graduate from college, or that the trust will match every dollar they earn from a real job. It could provide seed money to start a business, but only after they submit a solid business plan to the trustee. Payments might be tied to community service, staying out of debt, or even things like quitting smoking. These trusts are a powerful way for the original founder to guide their family long after they're gone. They're basically saying, this wealth is a tool, not a free pass for a life of leisure. It's here to help you become a productive, responsible person. Do your part and you'll be rewarded. It's a brilliant strategy that changes the trust from just a pot of money into a system for building character. For the super rich, taxes aren't just an annual chore, they're a force that can systematically destroy a fortune. The estate tax, the gift tax, and the generation skipping transfer tax, GSTT, are huge obstacles. Old money keeps its wealth because it has mastered the art of using trusts to legally and ethically minimize or even eliminate these taxes. We already talked about how dynasty trusts help dodge the estate tax at each generation, but the strategies get way more detailed. One of the most powerful tools is the strategic use of tax exemptions. For instance, in 2025, the federal estate and gift tax exemption is quite high, around $13.99 million per person. This means you can give away that much money during your life or at death without paying federal tax on it. An old money family doesn't let that exemption go to waste. The founder of a trust will often fund it with an amount right up to that limit. By moving $13.99 million into an irrevocable trust, they're not just shielding it from future estate taxes in their own estate. They are removing all of its future growth from the tax system. If that money grows to $100 million inside the trust over 50 years, that entire $100 million is forever outside the reach of the estate tax. Then you have the Generation Skipping Transfer Tax, GSTT. This is an extra tax designed to stop families from just leaving money directly to their grandkids to avoid paying taxes on the generation in between. The government wants its cut at every level, but there's a GSTT exemption too, identical to the estate tax exemption. A well-written Dynasty trust is set up to use this exemption, allowing wealth to flow down to grandkids and great-grandkids without triggering this extra tax. Another very common and effective strategy is the Irrevocable Life Insurance Trust, or ILIT. Life insurance payouts are generally income tax-free, but the money can still be part of your taxable estate if you own the policy yourself. For a wealthy person, this is a huge problem. A $20 million life insurance policy could create an $8 million estate tax bill. To avoid this, the family creates an ILIT. The trust itself, not the person, owns the life insurance policy. The individual gives money to the trust each year, and the trustee uses it to pay the premiums. When that person dies, the massive payout goes directly to the trust, not the estate. The money is completely free from estate taxes. This creates a huge pool of tax-free cash the family can use to pay other taxes, provide immediate funds to heirs, or simply pump more capital back into their dynasty trust, all without giving a huge cut to the IRS. In the world of old money, discretion is everything. Flaunting wealth is seen as tacky and, more importantly, dangerous. It attracts unwanted attention from the media, from scammers, and from the public. This deep need for privacy is a huge reason they use trusts, to avoid probate. Probate is the court process for settling a dead person's estate. When someone dies with assets just in their own name, their will has to be filed with the probate court. This does something old money families hate. It makes their financial business public record. The will, which says who gets what, becomes a public document. A list of all the assets, bank accounts, properties, investments, is often filed with the court. Suddenly, the family's private finances are on display. This can bring out nosy reporters, long-lost relatives contesting the will, and financial predators targeting the heirs. The whole process can be long, expensive, and stressful for a grieving family. Trusts offer a simple, elegant solution. Assets held in a trust don't go through probate. When the creator of a living trust dies, the trust document stays private. The next trustee simply steps in and starts managing the assets according to the trust's instructions. There's no court filing and no public record. The transfer of wealth happens quietly, efficiently, and privately. This obsession with privacy isn't just about being shy. It's a key part of their security. The less the public knows about a family's wealth, the less of a target they are for lawsuits, scams, or even physical threats like kidnapping. By keeping their finances out of the public eye, they create a protective layer of obscurity. Think of it this way: a will is a public announcement. A trust is a private memo. For families who have spent generations keeping a low profile and practicing stealth wealth, the choice is easy. They see probate as a major violation of a core family value: discretion. Using trusts to bypass it is a non-negotiable part of their plan. As a family fortune grows over generations and spreads across more family members, it gets incredibly complicated to manage. The assets are all over the place, the tax laws are a nightmare, and you might have dozens or even hundreds of beneficiaries. At this point, having one family member manage everything is a recipe for disaster. It invites conflict, bad decisions, and the risk of the whole thing falling apart. This is why old money families embrace the sixth strategy. They professionalize their wealth management. They stop treating the fortune like a personal bank account and start running it like a major corporation. The trust is the key to making this happen. The first step, as we mentioned, is hiring a corporate trustee. A professional trustee, like a bank's trust department, brings a level of expertise and impartiality that a family member just can't. They have teams of lawyers, accountants, and investment managers. They are legally required to act in the best interests of the beneficiaries and follow the trust's rules, which helps diffuse family arguments over money. A neutral professional can say no to an irresponsible heir by just pointing to the rules, taking the heat off of everyone else. For the richest families, they take it even further by creating what's called a private trust company. This is a company set up for the sole purpose of acting as the trustee for a single family's network of trusts. Instead of hiring a bank, they build their own in-house trust company. This gives them the best of both worlds. They get the professionalism and structure of a corporate trustee, but with a team that is 100% focused on their family's specific needs. The board of this company often includes a mix of senior family members and independent experts like experienced lawyers and investors. This structure, often called a family office, does more than just manage money. It becomes the command center for the family's entire financial life. It handles taxes, estate planning, charity, and even educating the younger generation about finance. The Rockefeller family, for instance, founded Rockefeller Financial Services to professionally oversee their assets. By centralizing control and professionalizing the management, old money families ensure that the system will outlive any one person. It protects the fortune from the emotional whims of individuals and makes sure decisions are made with discipline and a long-term perspective. It's the ultimate way to treat the family wealth, not as a possession, but as an enterprise. A common myth about old money is that they're super conservative, just letting their money sit in low-yield bonds and living off the interest. While protecting their capital is definitely priority number one, their strategy is way more dynamic than most people think. The seventh strategy is to use the massive scale and long-term timeline of their trust funds to get into sophisticated, high-growth investments that are off-limits to the average person. A trust fund with hundreds of millions of dollars plays in a totally different financial league. It can write checks big enough to get access to the most exclusive asset classes. This is way beyond a simple portfolio of stocks and bonds. We're talking about direct investments in private equity, where the trust buys into private companies. We're talking about venture capital, funding the next big thing in tech. They invest in hedge funds, with complex strategies that can make money even when the stock market is down. They are huge players in commercial real estate, owning office buildings and shopping centers. And they invest in things you can touch, like timberland and farmland, which are great stores of value that protect against inflation. The trust structure is perfect for this. These alternative investments are often illiquid, meaning you can't sell them quickly and can take a decade or more to pay off. For a normal person who might need their cash, that's a huge problem. But for a dynasty trust that's built to last for a century, that long timeline is a huge competitive advantage. They can afford to be patient and wait for these investments to mature without stressing about short-term market swings. Plus, the trust allows for extreme diversification. While you might be diversified across a few dozen stocks, a big family trust can be spread across thousands of securities, multiple asset classes, and different countries. This creates a powerful buffer against risk. If one part of the economy is doing poorly, another part of the portfolio can pick up the slack, keeping the trust's value stable and growing. This isn't just about getting richer. It's a calculated move for long-term survival. By diversifying so broadly and investing in things that aren't tied to the public markets, they protect the family fortune from stock market crashes. The trust becomes an all-weather vehicle, built to keep chugging along and compounding wealth through good times and bad. If you look at the names behind many of the world's most famous museums, universities and charities, you'll often see old money families: Carnegie, Ford, Duke, Rockefeller. That's not a coincidence. The eighth strategy in their playbook is using philanthropy in a way that serves two purposes. It builds a positive public legacy and it offers big tax advantages. Charitable giving is a core part of the culture for many of these families. It's an expression of noblesse oblige, the idea that wealth comes with a duty to give back. But beyond true altruism, it's also a very smart financial strategy, often carried out using charitable trusts. There are two main types they use: the Charitable Remainder Trust, CRT, and the Charitable Lead Trust, CLT. A charitable remainder trust is great for someone who has an asset that's grown a lot in value, like stocks or real estate. If they sold it, they'd get hit with a huge capital gains tax. Instead, they can donate the asset to a CRT. The trust can then sell the asset tax-free. The person then gets an income from the trust for a set number of years. When the trust term is over, what's left, the remainder, goes to a charity they choose. The result? They get a big tax deduction now, avoid capital gains tax, get an income stream and support a good cause. A charitable lead trust works the other way around. The family puts assets into the trust, and for a set time, the trust makes payments to a charity. At the end of that period, the remaining assets, including all the growth, go to the family heirs. This has a huge tax benefit. By leading with the charity, the value of the gift to the heirs is considered much lower for estate tax purposes. It lets them pass massive wealth to the next generation while paying little to no estate tax on it. Beyond these, setting up a large permanent family foundation is often the cornerstone of their public life. The Rockefeller Foundation is a perfect example. These foundations are a tax-efficient way to set aside a part of the family fortune for good causes. But they also do something more. They give the family a mission beyond just being rich. Family members, including the younger ones, often serve on the foundation's board, where they learn about management, finance, and social issues. It becomes a training ground for responsibility and unites the family around shared values. In this way, charity becomes more than just writing a check. It's a sophisticated strategy that's woven into the family's financial plan, allowing them to lower their tax bill, manage their public image, and teach stewardship to future generations. All the brilliant legal structures in the world don't mean a thing if the next generation isn't ready for the responsibility. Old money families get that their most important asset isn't their money, it's their people. The ninth strategy is a deep, almost obsessive focus on succession planning and formally educating their heirs. This starts very early. Long before kids can even understand what a trust fund is, they're being taught the family's values about money. Be frugal, work hard, and be discreet. They hear stories about how the founder built the fortune, and the idea that the family is just a temporary caretaker of the wealth is constantly reinforced. As they get older, this education gets more structured. The trust documents themselves often include more than just legal language. Some founders will include a statement of values or a personal letter right in the trust, explaining the family history, the purpose of the wealth, and their hopes for the future. It becomes a moral guide for the heirs. Regular family meetings are also common. At these meetings, senior family members and their professional advisors teach the younger generation about the family's finances. They learn how to read a balance sheet, they learn about the assets in the trust, and they discuss the family's charitable mission. It takes the mystery out of the wealth and replaces entitlement with informed responsibility. Trusts are also essential for my business succession. If a family owns a business, just splitting the shares among all the kids can be a disaster, leading to fights and a forced sale of the company. Instead, the business shares are often put into a trust. The trust is set up to make sure that control of the business passes to the most qualified heir or a professional manager. while the other heirs still get financial benefits from the profits without being able to meddle in the operations. This separates the money from the management, ensuring the health of the family's main wealth-generating engine. This commitment to education leads to what you could call financial literacy. Heirs aren't just given money, they're taught how to manage it. They might be given a small starter trust to manage with an advisor so they can learn about investing in a controlled environment. The goal isn't just to create wealthy heirs, but capable stewards. As the famous saying goes, you should leave your children enough money so they can do anything, but not so much that they can do nothing. The trust, combined with a serious education, is how they strike that delicate balance. The final strategy is maybe the most important, because it's the cultural software that makes all the other strategies work. It's not a legal structure you can create or a financial product you can buy. It's the deeply ingrained mindset that governs their entire relationship with money. Discretion, frugality, and long-term thinking. This is often called stealth wealth. Unlike new money, which often feels the need to show off its success with supercars, designer logos, and huge parties, old money does the opposite. They actively avoid drawing attention to their wealth. They know that showing off makes you a target and wastes capital that could be compounding for the future. This isn't about being cheap. It's about valuing quality and durability over trends. They'll spend a lot on things that matter and last. A great education, a well-built home, a timeless piece of art. But they avoid flashy things that lose value. The focus is always on the balance sheet, not the income statement. It's not about what you make or spend in a year, but the total value of the family's assets and how they're positioned for the future. This culture of quiet frugality is passed down as a core family value. Kids are taught to live below their means, no matter how big those means are. The goal is to make sure the family's lifestyle never grows faster than the trust's investments. This creates a permanent surplus, which is then reinvested, fueling the compounding machine for the next generation. At the heart of it all is a huge shift in perspective. They don't see themselves as owning the wealth. They see themselves as stewards. Their job is not to spend the family fortune, but to preserve and grow it for their kids and grandkids, just as their parents and grandparents did for them. This long-term view affects every single financial decision. They aren't investing for next quarter, they're investing for the next century. They aren't building a fortune for themselves, they're building a legacy for a dynasty. The trust fund is the legal and financial expression of this mindset. It's a structure built for the long haul, managed with professional discipline and guided by a culture of stewardship. It's the ultimate tool for beating the shirt sleeves to shirt sleeves curse. The legal structures are the armor, but the cultural habits, the discretion, the frugality, the long-term thinking are the discipline and skill of the person wearing it. And one is useless without the other. So there you have it. 10 of the core strategies that old money families have used for generations to build, protect, and continue their fortunes. We've seen how they use dynasty trusts to create a permanent family endowment, asset protection trusts to build a legal fortress, and incentive trusts to guide their heirs. We've looked at their strategies for minimizing taxes, their obsession with privacy, and their move to professionalize their fortunes by running them like a business. We saw how they leverage scale for sophisticated investments, use charity to build a legacy, and focus relentlessly on educating the next generation. And finally, we tied it all together with the most critical piece, the cultural mindset of stealth wealth and long-term stewardship. Now, you might be thinking, this is interesting, but I don't have $1 billion fortune for a dynasty trust. And that's a fair point. For most of us, these exact tools might seem out of reach, but the principles behind them are not. The core ideas of thinking long-term, choosing financial security over flashy spending, protecting your assets from risk, and teaching the next generation about money, these are universal truths. These are the principles that can help anyone at any level build a more secure financial future for themselves and their family. The trust fund isn't just a legal document for the rich, it's the physical result of a mindset of foresight, discipline and stewardship,